Hi Atari friends, in this video I would like to demonstrate for you the Mr. FPGA Retro computer emulator. This is the Mr. board. It's an FPGA based board that allows you to load cores for different retro machines, and this will emulate the retro computers. In this video, I will mainly focus on the Atari 800XL computer. So if you look at this board, it's made up of two main components. The lower board is the FPGA board, and the top board is the breakout board that has the SRAM that is required for the Atari 8-bit emulation, as so as the other machines that it emulates. It also has some push buttons, control buttons, also Ethernet port. It has HDMI video. The breakout board also has VGA and analog video output, analog audio, power, and so on. The Mr. board is smaller than the MIST. This is the MIST FPGA device that I demonstrated in another video. As you can see, it's smaller in size than the MIST, but it's more powerful. It has the dual-core Cortex A9 running at 800 MHz, and it has the Altera Cyclone V FPGA with 1 GB DDR3 RAM, so it can emulate the retro machine more powerful than the MIST. Let's demonstrate how it works. So we will need to connect to the Mr. an OTG cable that will allow us to connect USB devices. This is kind of a cable that you would use when you would like to connect USB devices to your phone. Right, here it goes. So it's an OTG cable to USB. And here I can connect my keyboard and joystick and other USB devices. I'm going to connect more than one device here, so I'm going to use a USB hub. Just connect a USB hub there. Of course, there are also OTG hubs that you can get, which will simply break out that into 4 USB ports. On the other side, I'm going to connect the HDMI connector for my TV, HDMI cable for my TV, and power. Let's switch on the screen first. Also, let's get us a keyboard connected. And a USB joystick. Let's connect the power to the Mr. board. As soon as we get the power, we can see that the LEDs switched on, and we got a menu. Let's put this right here. Alright. So we get a menu, and from the menu we can select the different cores that are already uploaded into the Mr. micro SD card. I forgot to mention that both board has a micro SD slot. The FPGA board has the micro SD slot where you can upload the different cores. And the breakout board also have a micro SD where you can put there the ATR files and other files for various of emulations. To this board I already uploaded an Apple II core, a Galaxian Arcade, Time Pilot Arcade, Atari VCS, Atari 5200, Atari 800, Commodore 64, ColecoVision, which is just a core to do a self-test to the Mr. board, an Amiga core, TurboGrafx 16 Arcade, and a ZX Spectrum. As I said, I'm going to focus on the Atari core. So as soon as I select the Atari core, the Mr. will boot into Atari 800 XL computer, and I can use my USB keyboard to basically just operate as I would run a regular Atari computer. The core is actually a port from the MIST core, so if I'm going to push F12, I will go to the same menu that I demonstrated when I showed the MIST or the EclaireXL FPGA board. I can speed up the CPU. I can select to speed up the disk loading. Let's select it as a drive as a turbo speed, so ATR files will run faster. I can select the memory expansion scheme. Let's do 1 megabyte. I can select the Atari OS ROM. I'm just going to use a standard ROM. I can change the aspect ratio between 16:9 or 4:3. So it will allow me to view the Atari computer in the scale ratio that resembles to the old screen. I can change between PAL and NTSC, and I can load an ATR file or an executable file. Let's, for example, select to load the Balderdash game, and I can just exit, boot the computer, and it's loading fast into Balderdash. Using the joystick, I can start and play the game. Now, if I'm going to push F12, I can define the joystick buttons. So basically I can put here any USB type of joystick and program the MIST to follow the joystick direction. So this is going to be right, left, down, down, up, fire, and just going to push space to skip, and that's it. Now I can just play the game, push start, and just control the computer with the USB joystick. If I'm going to push the Windows key and the F12, I can show you that I can again go and change the joystick definition or load a different core or different machine. We'll do a quick demonstration of that at the end. So again, pushing F12, let's load another software. Let's go to demos. Let's see this one. Escape. It's now loading in a high-speed SIO routine, loading a very large Atari executable file. The emulation is pretty much mature. Almost every software and game that I've tested, I was able to run using this core. It's a pretty much an old demo showing some basic stuff. I can go back to the menu, change things, and then go back to the software or game again. Let's try another title, just for the fun. Let's see what else we got. I wonder what's that Atari logo. No, let's see what this is. Alright, that's the Atari logo on the screen. That's nice. So that's the Mr. FPGA board. Very nice. As a difference between the Mist, that it has a smaller form factor and you can load all the cores into one card that is installed on the baseboard, while the Mist just need to change the software core every time you want to boot. And it has a different micro SD to store your ATR files that goes into the breakout board. And so I can take out the micro SD, go to my PC, load more files, more ATRs there, and use that. The Atari computer doesn't use the Ethernet port, but I'm assuming that if I'm going to do something with the 486 PC emulation, or maybe the Amiga, I can use this Ethernet port for their use. Again, going back to the menu, we can go switch cores, change FPGA. Let's go and load an Atari 5200 emulation and push F12 to load a cartridge. Couple of cartridge here. Let's try the Gremlins one, and I just emulated a cartridge, the Gremlins game. Let's try a different core. If I want a Commodore 64, selecting the Commodore 64 core, and now I'm booting into a Commodore 64 computer where I can mount a D64 Commodore disk or Commodore games out of the many that I uploaded here, and we can just load the Commodore software. Or I can go and change the Meister to work as a ColecoVision, and I can select a Coleco game, and I'm just inserted a Coleco cartridge, where I can just play a Coleco game. One player. I guess I have to program the controller here. Define joystick buttons. Right, left, down, up, fire. You just have to hold the joystick in the right direction to play. Never played that game before. Let's try, see what else we got. So I got an Atari, ColecoVision. I can switch the FPGA to load as an Amiga machine. I probably would need to add here a mouse so I can operate this computer and load a game or software and test that as well. We also have here, try to how do I exit? F12? Windows and F12. Change core. Get a ZX Spectrum. So I can just switch into a ZX Spectrum machine, and the same thing as here, load the Spectrum file, disk, and test it as well. Or there are more. You can also emulate an arcade machine. Let's try to the Time Pilot. So the Mister now is emulating a Time Pilot arcade where I can play this game. The Meister is an open source project where you can download the core for free. You can buy the FPGA board, but the breakout board, you have to build it yourself. There is no store that currently sells it, so you can just download the board, produce the PCB, solder the top breakout component, and then you could play and test those different retro computers that I showed earlier. Well, let's go back to the Atari. Well, that's all for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, keep enjoy and play with your Atari. In another video, as you can see, it's smaller in size than the Mist, but it's more powerful. It has the dual-core Cortex A9 running at 800 MHz, and it has the Altera Cyclone V FPGA with 1 GB DDR3 RAM, so it can emulate the retro machine. Hi Atari friends, in this video I would like to demonstrate for you the Mr. FPGA Retro computer emulator. This is the Mr. board. It's our board that has the SRAM that is required for the Atari 8-bit emulation, as so as the other machines that it emulates. It also has some push buttons, control buttons, also Ethernet port. It has HDMI video. It's an FPGA based board that allows you to load cores for different retro machines, and this will emulate the retro computers. In this video I will mainly focus on the Atari 800XL computer. So if you look at this board, it's made up of two main components. The lower board is the FPGA board, and the top board is the breakout. The breakout board also has VGA and analog video output, analog audio, power, and so on. The Mr. board is smaller than the MIST. This is the MIST FPGA device that I demonstrated